Imagine a restaurant so popular it had a 2-hour wait on a Tuesday night. A place so deeply woven into American culture that birthdays, anniversaries, and marriage proposals happen there. A chain that served millions of families every single year. Now imagine that same company filing for bankruptcy. Not because people stopped coming, not because Americans stopped eating seafood, but because of shrimp. That's the story everyone tells. But companies almost never collapse because of one bad promotion. They collapse when the business underneath slowly stops making sense. And long before endless shrimp became the headline, Red Lobster had already built a business that was becoming more fragile every single year. The shrimp didn't sink the ship. It simply revealed how much water was already inside. Selling an experience. When Red Lobster opened in 1968, it wasn't really selling seafood. It was selling accessibility. For most Americans, lobster, crab, and shrimp felt luxurious, reserved for vacations, expensive restaurants, or special occasions near the coast. Red Lobster changed that. Suddenly, families in almost any city could enjoy seafood without spending a fortune. It wasn't just dinner. It felt like a celebration. And of course, there were the Cheddar Bay biscuits. Warm, garlicky, unlimited. A symbol so powerful that people still talk about them today. By the 1990s, Red Lobster was the largest seafood restaurant chain in the world. From the outside, it looked unstoppable. But successful businesses aren't built only on customers. They're built on margins. The business behind the menu. Most people assume restaurants make huge profits. The reality is almost the opposite. Every meal has to pay for ingredients, employees, utilities, insurance, maintenance, marketing, and if the company doesn't own the building, rent. Each plate generates surprisingly little profit. For years, Red Lobster managed that balance. Customers didn't just order seafood. They ordered appetizers, desserts, drinks. Those higher margin items kept the math working. But over time, food became more expensive. Labor became more expensive. Transportation became more expensive. Competition got stronger. And every year, the margin got a little thinner. Yet the biggest problem wasn't happening inside the kitchen. It was happening underneath the buildings. The real estate trap. Most customers thought Red Lobster was in the seafood business. Investors saw something else: real estate. Many restaurant locations sat on valuable land the company owned outright. Those properties represented enormous long-term security. In 2014, after Red Lobster was sold by Darden Restaurants, many of those buildings were sold to real estate investors and immediately leased back. The deal generated a huge amount of cash. But cash solves today's problems. Rent creates tomorrow's. Before the sale, restaurants operated in buildings they already owned. Afterward, they had to pay rent every single month, whether business was booming or slowing down. Nothing changed for customers. The biscuits were still there. The seafood was still there. The restaurants looked almost exactly the same. But financially, the company had become much heavier. And when fixed costs increase, every mistake becomes more expensive. The shrimp that became the symbol. By the early 2020s, Red Lobster was already under pressure. Costs had increased. Rent payments had increased. Fast casual restaurants were offering quicker, cheaper meals. Delivery apps had changed how people ate. Consumers had more choices than ever. Red Lobster needed something to bring people back. It already had the perfect promotion, Ultimate Endless Shrimp. For years, it had been a limited-time event. Customers loved it because it felt special. It filled restaurants during slower periods. Everyone won. Then in 2023, they made it permanent. The response was immediate. Restaurants filled up. Social media exploded. Customers came in groups and stayed for hours, ordering 10, 12, 15 rounds of shrimp. The promotion succeeded at exactly what it was designed to do. It brought people back. But more customers don't automatically mean more profit. Every refill meant more food, more labor, longer stays, and fewer opportunities to seat new guests. The dining rooms looked healthier than ever. The balance sheet didn't. The company lost more than $11 million on the promotion in a single quarter. But here's the truth. Endless shrimp didn't cause the bankruptcy. It simply exposed a business that had already become too fragile to survive another mistake. When busy isn't enough, there's an assumption people make about business. If customers keep showing up, the company must be making money. That's often true, but not always. A business survives because every sale generates enough profit to cover everything behind it: the building, the employees, the equipment, the debt, the rent. Red Lobster reached a point where selling more actually made things worse. Restaurants were still serving millions of meals. Parking lots were still full. Families were still celebrating birthdays. Customers still loved the biscuits. But the economics underneath had stopped working. In 2024, Red Lobster filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. More than 100 restaurants closed almost overnight. Thousands of employees lost their jobs. Gift cards held by loyal customers became worthless. An American icon, one that had fed generations of families for over 50 years, was suddenly fighting just to survive. The lesson: this story isn't unique to Red Lobster. We've seen it before in cities, in industries, in companies that once seemed too big to fail. The pattern is always the same. Decisions that generate cash today quietly destroy resilience for tomorrow. And when pressure finally arrives, there's nothing left to absorb it. Red Lobster collapsed because it traded long-term resilience for short-term cash. It sold the assets that protected it. It replaced ownership with permanent costs. And little by little, every bad quarter became harder to survive than the last. Companies rarely collapse overnight. They collapse slowly through 100 decisions that each made sense in isolation. And then all at once, the dining room stayed full. The business didn't. If you want more stories behind the world's biggest successes and failures, like and subscribe. The next story is already waiting.